Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. This video today is for those of you who want to make 2025 the most transformative spiritual year of your life. I know that sounds like a really ridiculous statement to make, but there are some things that we can do at this point in the year to make the year really successful. Some things that we can plan out, some things that we can adjust, and it's important that we do the planning, because if not, we just end up becoming kind of victimized by life a little bit. We get pulled left, right and center. But if you can just give yourself, however long this video ends up being, a bit of time to plan out your 2025 year, it will make such a huge difference. I've been on the spiritual path, as many of you know, for like 25 years. And so a lot of what I'm going to go through today are things that I've refined, things that I've understood a little bit more and worked out make a really big difference to your spiritual progress. So let's jump into today's video. So the first point that I want to make, and this is for some of you that might be yet at the point where you have a clear direction spiritually, it is to understand your own personal North Star. Now, I will be teaching you today how kind of in line with my approach and my beliefs. And to be honest, I do think that everyone has the same North Star. We may just look at it slightly differently. So, for example, my North Star is the purpose for me actually calling myself a spiritual person and engaging in practices like meditation or prayer or mantra. So the North Star for me is what I would call God or the divine. Some people may call it the universe or source. But ultimately, it's this recognition that, okay, this is my human body, but I'm not actually a human being. I'm just experiencing that now. In the same sense that if I was to drive down the road, I wouldn't start saying to myself, I'm the car. The car is just the vehicle that I'm using. But where I'm going to in the car, in this spiritual sense, in this human sense, is that we're coming down, we're experiencing life, and then we're working our way back to God, to source, to who we really are. And if you've clicked on a video like this, the chances are that you're very spiritually advanced, or at least you're at a position in your soul's development, time in your soul's development, where you're ready to make the steps back. You're ready to start to work back to who you really are, to the truth of who you are. So having this North Star, honestly, it is so crucial, because I see so many people in the spiritual space that sort of go down this avenue. I'm gonna have a look into tarot. I'm gonna have a look into magic. I'm gonna try this particular thing. I'm gonna go down this path, or I'm gonna try that. And that's not a criticism, by the way, or a judgment. It's understandable, because you're all, and we're all, me too, we're all learning. We're all sort of trying to grasp the path and trying to understand what works for us. So it's not to say that you shouldn't do those things, but if you want to jump ahead, if you want to skip a lot of mistakes, a lot of potential roadblocks, and stop yourself wasting time, I would highly recommend that you take a moment to get clear on what your personal North Star is. And for me, and I believe for most people, that is God. And some other people might just not call it God. They might call it something like enlightenment. Or they might call it unity consciousness. Whatever whatever the term is, or the terms that you personally use, that's okay. For me, I use the divine. And it's clear that you have that. It's really essential that you have that, because everything that you then do, and every time that you face a period in your spiritual journey where you're feeling unmotivated, or you're thinking, why am I doing this, or what's the point, or you're starting to lose interest a little bit, you can always come back to that clear North Star that you've made clear in your own mind. And I know it might sound really obvious, but sometimes just having that clarity of mind as to, okay, this is the reason that I do it. This is why I love it. This is what I want to get from it. This is what I want to learn about myself from it. And that then becomes your North Star. It becomes the motivating factor for you. And also, when other hurdles or avenues come along, you can always then check those against what your North Star is and be like, is that helping me? Is that taking me closer to my North Star? Or is it another offshoot of the spiritual path that I don't need to waste my time going down? So gather and understand what your North Star is. Okay, so point number 2 is carve out time each day. May seem simple, but so many people are on the spiritual path, and this is going to sound quite rude, and I don't mean it to come across rude, I just mean it, we just get confused. Many people just give lip service to their religion or their spiritual path. They dress in a spiritual way, or they may read spiritual books, watch spiritual videos, but they don't give time to actually developing themselves and actually getting closer to the North Star that they've chosen. So it's absolutely crucial that going into 2025, you figure out a way, if you possibly can, to carve out a little bit of time every single day. So if I draw out like a wheel here, this is a bit like a pie chart, what I would recommend doing is writing down a list of your priorities. So it might be, for example, that you have family or partner, friends, obviously sleep, work, like the body. So that body kind of encompasses food, exercise, all that sort of stuff. And you may have like 5 to 10 different duties that you need to take care of on a probably potentially a daily but definitely weekly basis. And the spiritual aspect of yourself has to be there. And for me, the divine comes above everything. And so it's essential that I find time at some point throughout the day to dedicate to my spiritual life. Just in the same way that I wouldn't go a day without drinking water, or I wouldn't go a day without having a shower maybe, or like brushing my teeth or something. These are things that we as human beings have come to understand the body needs. The body needs that kind of care. It needs to have food fairly regularly, it needs water, it needs sleep. All of these different duties, you could say, are needs of the body. But if you're a spiritual seeker, you understand that there is also a spiritual component to you. Call it the divine within you, call it your soul, spirit, whatever you like. That needs communion with God. It needs communion with the divine. It seeks that, it desires that. So spending time in prayer, spending time in meditation, contemplation, giving yourself basically a bit of time each day. So I would segment off your day, and it only needs to be a small amount of time. It doesn't mean that you need to, because it's a priority, you need to be spending 10 hours a day doing it. Just give yourself a little bit. So it might be that you can only dedicate 10 minutes a day or 20 minutes a day. That's fine. I'll put S for spiritual. This might be like F for family, B for body, F for friends, and you can kind of S for sleep. So you can kind of create this wheel and make sure that every single day you're giving yourself a bit of time. And to do that, obviously you want to look at your schedule, ask yourself, okay, when's best for me? I've got a busy life, I've got kids, I've got a job. Maybe I need to get up half an hour earlier. Maybe me giving my spiritual life some time requires some sacrifice, and that sacrifice might be half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening, taking 20 minutes out your lunch break. Whatever it is that you can do personally, and this will differ for everyone, carving out time each day in 2025 is the most important thing that we can do as spiritual seekers. Okay, so moving on to number 3. Number 3 is establishing your toolkit. So once we've got to the point where we're like, okay, I need to dedicate some time every single day to my spiritual life. I understand that, kind of makes sense to me. The next thing is like, okay, doing what? So this part, number 3, is about the tools that we use each and every day in order to connect and communicate with Source or develop ourselves in a spiritual manner. So there are several tools that I personally tend to use and advise. First one, obviously, being meditation. I say obviously because it's pretty much the main thing that I speak about on this channel. So giving yourself some time to sit quietly in silence. Everything comes out of silence. So when we start to quieten the mind, quieten the body, start to let go of everything that we attach to in life and delve more into the silence, we start to immediately communicate, or gradually, not immediately, but gradually communicate more and more with the deeper parts of ourselves, the soul, the spirit, the divine. We're starting to understand ourselves more, and we're giving ourselves time. And there are millions of things that, quite literally, probably not millions, but there are hundreds of things that go on throughout the process of a meditation, many of which I've talked about many times on this channel, so I won't get into all of that. But sitting in meditation every single day is really important, because it also shows a degree of effort and intent, and that is also important. We can talk about that a bit later on. So meditation is one, prayer is another. Meditation and prayer, truthfully, are very similar in that they are both a quiet communion with the source. And obviously that has to happen within us. It's the inner work that we're really doing. So meditation, prayer, contemplation. Contemplation is simply, as you would imagine, it's to sit down each day, and maybe just only for 2 minutes before you meditate, maybe 5 minutes after you meditate, maybe separately by itself in the middle of the day. You sit down and you just contemplate spirituality. You just contemplate who you are. Who am I? I know I'm not this body. You know, what's the truth to this? I know I call it a pen. I know it looks like a pen, but what's actually the truth of it? I'm told by spiritual teachers that everything is one. So why am I seeing that as being separate? Can I go beyond this? We label it a pen. I see it as a pen. It feels like what we call a pen, but what's the truth of it? So you can go on like this and contemplate reality. You can contemplate the divine. You can speak to the divine in your mind in a more sort of friendly, chit-chatty way, as opposed to meditation, as opposed to prayer, which is typically a more formal connection with God. So chit-chat, contemplation, that's really, really good. What you can see I'm sort of doing with all of these practices, or you will be doing with all these practices, is that you're giving the divine more time mentally. So rather than it being consumed in daily life and what's going on the news and what's happening outside, we're giving it time each day, and we're now starting to align our mind more with what we want. And obviously by the law of attraction, we gravitate to ourselves what it is that we want, or what it is that we think about. So another one on there is mantra. Mantra is the repetition of sacred names or sacred sounds. Jesus, Krishna, God, divine, other Sanskrit mantras. These all carry divine vibrations or high vibrations that when we repeat over and over again, that's what is known as japa, which is repetition. When we repeat it over and over and over again, these vibrations build up, and this helps us to connect with the divine more. It helps us to elevate our level of consciousness. It purifies our consciousness. There's so many benefits to doing mantra. It keeps the mind busy. So many benefits. It's a highly advisable practice for any spiritual seeker. So it's important for you to develop a toolkit of things that you can use to start to really make moves along the spiritual path. And if you are hearing me talk about these things now, and you think, well, I know a bit about meditation, I know a bit about these things, but I don't really know enough. I've got an online school, it's called the Inner Journey School. I teach everything you could possibly want to know about meditation, loads of different intricacies, loads of different techniques. I talk about all of this, all of the tools that we need spiritually, and there's a whole community in there. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check that out. And that kind of leads me on to the final one, which is community, or Sangha. Sangha. We become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. It's something to that effect. Well, if we can spend time with, even though it's online, if we can spend more time with spiritual people who are on the path, who are of a similar mindset to us, it helps us. It really, really does. And I've seen that for myself. Okay, so moving on to number 4. 4 is more about your mindset throughout the year. And I'm going to just say persistence. Naturally, you all know we go through ups and downs, don't we, throughout the year. If you've been doing this for a while, or if you're new to all of this, you will know we go through so many ups and downs throughout the year, and we need that persistence. And to some extent, all of the things that I've mentioned above will help us with that. The things above will give us the persistence, because when we start going through phases and periods that are difficult, we'll be like, okay, I know what my North Star is. I just need to carve out time each day. I just need to do these things here. But understanding that the reason we need persistence is because the ego, the part of us that we're actually trying to overcome, makes life very difficult for us. And it makes life difficult because we're trying to overcome it, quite simply. And as we get closer to overcoming it, as we do things, we establish our toolkit and we do these things that are quite literally peeling away the layers of it, it rises up in the form of resistance, in the form of boredom, in the form of nothing appears to be happening, or I'm not making any progress. All of these ideas start to kind of surface more and more when we're going through the difficult moments or throughout the year on the spiritual path. So it's essential that you develop persistence and that you understand the principles of the ego, understanding what the ego is, understanding how it manifests for you personally, where it manifests, where it's got a real strong hold of you, and seeing if you can just gently start to overcome that particular area in yourself. This makes a huge difference, and it's essential. And finally, moving on to number 5, it is enjoy it. Enjoy yourself. There's a friend of mine wrote a book, it's called The Final Great Path East, and somewhere in the book he says something to the effect of, seeking the divine is a quest of great beauty, it's not a chore. And it's something that I think is so important to remind ourselves of, because it's the truth. We're going along this spiritual path, and yeah, we're uncovering and exposing lots of parts of ourselves that we might not want to see and we might not want to experience, i.e. talking about the ego and this persistence. But it has to come up to allow the beauty that is within, the peace that's within us, the stillness, the balance, the love, to actually be experienced. And I know that sounds a bit cliche and a bit soft to some people, but that is the truth of it. It's one thing that I've noticed very much so, is that over the years of practicing meditation and being on this path, is I've noticed that the more and more of the ego I've peeled away, and no doubt there's still a lot to go, but the more I have peeled away, the more this just baseline sense of love has been there, this baseline sort of peace and contentment. And yeah, I do have periods still where the ego will kick back. It will have a little moment where it wants to try and get in control again, but they are less frequent, and it's definitely something that I've noticed. And I think the more that I've made this a habit, the more I've been clear on what my North Star is, the more consistently I've carved time out each day, the more I've really just immersed myself in this life, read books, had a community and spoke with lots of spiritual people quite regularly. And likewise with meditation, when you get over the difficult parts, it's beautiful to sit down and be completely calm and peaceful and have feelings of love or bliss or whatever you may be experiencing in meditation surface, and just be like, this is incredible. To be able to sit here in stillness with a peaceful mind, to be grateful for everything you've got, all of the simple things in your life, because meditation does do that. It teaches you to be content with nothing, because all you're doing is maybe following your breath or watching a candle flame. And so you do that for a few years and you become extremely content with very little, basically nothing. And so that transfers over into daily life. When you're going about your daily life, you don't need anything to be happy, because you've taught yourself over the last year or couple of years that you don't need anything to be happy. Just sitting there in silence, observing your breath, brings you into a state of total peace and contentment. So yeah, that's going to be something that develops more and more, but you do consciously need to remind yourself to enjoy it. Don't take it too seriously all the time. It is something you need to be generally serious about, in terms of take it seriously, give it the time, but have fun with it, have a laugh. Talk to the divine in a fun way, as if it's your friend sometimes. Be joyful. Take that joy into the meditations and into your prayers. It's so important. So I believe if you can map this out and plan your 2025 and follow these simple guidelines here, I think it will make a huge difference to how you are and how how kind of deep you go in your spiritual journey over this next year. I'm going to leave it at that. Best of luck. As I said earlier, if you want to join my online school, links in the description. Failing that, I'll see you on the next video. Thanks a lot.